Something I'm going to share with you guys today is one of the most important concepts that you can ever understand in your whole life. It is the concept of surrender. Now, if you're familiar with the Jewish holidays, Yom Kippur was just the other day, and my God, I was deleted. And that's the best kind of thing I could ever tell you, especially after fasting, a dry fast for 24 hours with the one intention to come back to the affliction. It's one of the commandments is that you should afflict yourself, and that's through the fast. And every time you feel the hunger, come back to the intention, come back to the words that you're reading, come back to that very deep internal investigative process. And so you kind of bounce in between that until you're in a really meditative state. And you could imagine when I was younger, I absolutely hated it. What I learned about surrender is that it is the most powerful concept that I've ever internalized in my life. And I realized how many times I've actually used it. And so you hear it a lot, and I'm probably going to tell it to you straight. I think you probably know that by now. What does it really mean to surrender? Why is this thing so powerful that everybody claims to use for themselves? And so I realized, I said, well, surrender at its very core is, this is for me. Now I want those words to echo through your soul. Because to surrender to something is to realize, not that it just kicks your ass and throws you into a laundry and just kicks you out. It is to look it in the eye and go, this is for me. I'm going to show up to this 100%. And so my whole life, it was always something I've really rejected because, my God, that's the last thing you want to do in a world where you need to take action. You got to hustle and you got to change the world by tomorrow. I realized the beauty of being somebody who can show up for what's present is somebody who knows how to surrender. And now, what are you surrendering to exactly? And I kind of wanted to share a little bit about this discovery of mine that's very, very recent, and it's one that's changed my life. And it's one that changed my life because it made me realize who's really doing all the transformation. Transformation is a divine process that people can tap into by living their life in the present. It does not exist anywhere else, because at the end of the day, if I told you all of the things that you needed to fix about you, the list would never end. And so I want to be tackling that and also realizing, how the hell am I supposed to be the person that's going to fix all of those things about me? I hardly know how to take a shit and wipe my ass. And sometimes we feel that way. Sometimes we don't even know how to communicate the very things that we feel. And now you need to be the one responsible to change your life? No, that's why it's important to understand where these things really come from, is that this is on a spiritual level. And that's where all transformation happens. The year 2022 is one of the most powerful years of my life. It was the most powerful year of my life because I was able to surrender to the very feelings of desire, adventure, aspiration towards more. To surrender to it means that I'm not going to resist it, but I'm going to be with it. And then these powerful words came up. This is for me. This is for you. Now, as life started to go on, I realized, why did I fall out of that pocket? And there was a pocket I've been in, and it's the flow in life. And as of very recently, I've been reconnected to it. And I think that, you could probably see that across my platforms as you were like, oh, whoa, there he is. He's back in reality. And it's like, yeah, because I wasn't. The very thing that takes us out of surrender is that we think that we could avoid suffering. We think that we could avoid pain. We think that we could avoid struggle. We think that we could avoid rejection. And because we think that we can avoid those things, we end up removing ourselves from the very presence by which we experience our life and transform to be who we desire. I also always understood surrender to be something like, what, surrender? Like, I'm not going to do that. That's a weak thing to do. And I want to be able to reframe that for you because I believe it's the strongest thing any of you guys can do. The story of Moses is very powerful because he ran from something that was so traumatic for him. His own father seeking to kill him, who was the king of Egypt. And he's a prince of Egypt by byproduct. And he runs and he realizes, what is it to seek resistance? Is to be somebody who understands how to surrender to it. A lot of the time we look for a life that we want to create peace, and we understand that through surrender is the very way that we create peace. And the paradox is it's almost like you're looking for the resistance, then how can you ever have peace? And it's because you're surrendering to it when you find it. And there's a certain point to where you seek it so much, it's because you love you, because you understand that that's for you too. I had a call with a client today and she was talking about how still everything is. I'm waiting. I said, waiting? You're avoiding. You're avoiding the very thing that the stillness is taking you to, and immediately just tap on the thing that she was resisting, which was in relationship to her child, that something was coming up. I realized the way that you create a coward is by getting somebody to run from what needs to be faced. because they believe that they can't face it. So much of my life I've been running. When I started living it was about 2022. This is a manifestation of me surrendering to the very next thing that I needed to do to understand the very next step that I need to take. I pull myself out of that when I start resisting. And what is it, you might ask? What do you resist? Sadness, struggle, pain, responsibility, purpose. And I often notice that every time I resist that, it's because I don't believe that it's for me. So of course, how could you surrender to something that's going to be the very end of you? I believe that you could surrender to things when you understand that at a very core level that this is for you. When this is for you, and eventually you start connecting to that, you begin to seek the resistance, and then through that you create peace. You might say, hey, in a lot of ways, how does that make any sense? You're technically opening up to a lot of confrontation. Well, let me explain. You have a confrontation with a friend, and that brings up a lot. And, opposed to what most people do is just surrender, let go, let the universe figure it out. And it's like, no, surrender to the very fact that every time your friend texts you, you get pissed off at him. Confront it. Now, you're no longer resisting it. You're actually allowing yourself to go with it. Oh, very pretty girl. Wow, she's beautiful. I'll just, and what happens, happens. That's actually somebody resisting. What if you let go of the resistance and allowed yourself to realize that that is for you? That very frame is what allows us to get connected to the very part of ourselves that's eternal. And I started realizing this in my life of how relevant this is. And it was like, I read 4 of my journals in 12 hours while fasting. And there was one thing I realized. What created the success was not that it was going to happen for me like I was entitled to it, which is most people's lives, is that when there was something I needed to face, I faced it. Do you want to know where I went wrong? When I resisted that like it would be the last time that happened. And so much we create this figmented fantasy of peace. We want it so bad. And it's like it's through very much accepting that it will always be there so that you change yourself to seek it. And it's like, well, what kind of person would do that? Don't you just want to experience your life until it ends? And it's like, no, because through that very thing is more meaning than you could ever imagine, and a revelation that could set people free. That's why. And I realized that maturity is being able to look life in the eye and go, oh, whoa, a front seat to terror, a front seat to darkness, a front seat to everything that I've been rejecting. Let's fucking go. The day you do that and you stop resisting what's being showed to you is the day that you transform and you realize that a peaceful life is not one avoiding conflict, but by one allowing themselves to show up to it without resisting it. Because guess what? The person that you dream of becoming is on the other side.